The tomatoes were the last thing I picked that morning. I remember because I'd been meaning to stake the vines all week and kept forgetting, and my neighbor Joyce had stopped by the fence to remind me again, laughing in that gentle way she has. It was the kind of ordinary Tuesday that you don't think about until later, until it becomes the before. Before everything changed, before I finally stopped pretending that what was happening in my own home was somehow my fault. My name is Loretta. I'm 67 years old. I lived until 10 months ago in the same house in Akron, Ohio that my late husband Gerald and I bought in 1989 for $112,000. We painted every room ourselves. Gerald built the back deck with his own hands one summer, burned through 3 packs of Band-Aids and was proud of every single splinter. When he passed 4 years ago, I thought about selling. My daughter convinced me not to. She said the house was part of the family. She was right about that. What none of us knew then was that someone else had already started thinking of it as theirs. My son is a good man, mostly. I need you to understand that because the story gets hard when it comes to him. His name is Peter, and he has his father's eyes and his grandmother's stubbornness, which is either a blessing or a curse depending on the week. He met his wife, Shannon, at a work conference in Columbus 7 years ago. She was sharp, pretty, well-dressed. At the rehearsal dinner, she told me she'd always wanted a mother-in-law she could be close to. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. They moved in with me 2 years ago. Peter had been laid off in the spring. The company restructured, eliminated his whole department. The kind of thing that's no one's fault but still feels like a personal failure to a man like my son. Shannon's income as a dental office manager was steady but not enough for their mortgage on top of everything else. And they had credit card debt I didn't know the full extent of yet. I told Peter, of course, come home, get back on your feet. I converted the guest room into a proper bedroom for them. I cleared half my closet. I made space in every way I knew how. The first few months were fine. We had dinner together most nights. Shannon helped me figure out how to use the new streaming app on my TV. I thought, maybe this works. Maybe this is what families do now. I can't pinpoint the exact moment things shifted. It was gradual, the way mold grows. You don't see it until it's already spread. It started small. Shannon reorganizing the kitchen without asking. My good baking dishes moved to the top shelf I can't reach. The mail stacked in a new spot that I kept forgetting. Little things. I told myself I was being too sensitive, the way women my age are told we're always being too sensitive. Then it became medium things. She started referring to the house as our place when she talked on the phone to her friends. She'd give Peter a look, just a look, when I mentioned plans I'd made, as if my plans were an inconvenience to be managed. She redecorated the living room while I was visiting my sister in Pittsburgh for a week. Came home to new throw pillows, a different rug, and my mother's secretary desk pushed into the corner like it was something to be ashamed of. I said something that time. I said, Shannon, I'd have appreciated being asked. She smiled and said she thought I'd love the refresh. Peter looked at the floor. I told myself, they're under stress, the job situation, the adjustment. Give it time. I gave it time. One Saturday in March, I had plans. My friend Audrey and I had tickets to a matinee at the Civic Theatre. We'd bought them 2 months before, a whole afternoon planned, dinner after at the Italian place on Market Street. I was dressed and ready by noon, feeling more like myself than I had in weeks. That was when Shannon came into the kitchen and set her hands on the counter and looked at me the way you look at someone when you've already decided what you want them to do. She said her sister was coming with the kids. She said the house needed to be cleaned before they arrived. She said, and I want you to understand, she said this completely calmly, completely reasonably, as if it were obvious. You should cancel your plans and help me get ready. I thought I'd misunderstood her. I said, I'm sorry. She said it again. Cancel your plans. Help clean up. Her sister would be there by 3. I stood there in my kitchen. My kitchen, with the window Gerald replaced the year before he got sick, with the tile backsplash I'd chosen myself from a catalogue, and I felt something I can only describe as a profound disorientation. Like the floor had shifted an inch to the left and I was the only one who noticed. I said, "Shannon, I have plans." She said, "This is important to me." I said, "My plans are important to me too." That was when she raised her voice. Not screaming, but hard. The kind of voice that's designed to make you feel like a child who said something foolish. She said I didn't seem to understand that she was asking for one afternoon, that I could see Audrey any time, that the house wouldn't clean itself. And this is the part that still sits in my chest when I think about it, that if I wasn't willing to be helpful, then I needed to ask myself what exactly I was contributing around here. What I was contributing. In my own house, I didn't cancel my plans. I picked up my purse and I walked to the door and I said, without turning around, that dinner would be whatever she made it, and I left. The matinee was a musical. I don't even remember which one. I sat next to Audrey and I smiled and I clapped at the right moments, and I thought about absolutely nothing except keeping my face arranged correctly. At dinner, I finally told her what happened. Audrey put down her fork and said, "Loretta, how long has this been going on?" And when I started to answer, I realized I had to go back further than I'd thought. Much further. That night, Peter was waiting up. Shannon had gone to bed. He looked tired and sorry and young in a way that broke my heart a little. He said she hadn't meant it the way it sounded. He said she was stressed. He said he'd talk to her. I asked him, "Peter, do you understand that this is my home?" He said, "Of course, Mom." "Then act like it," I told him. And I went to bed. I want to be fair to my son. After that conversation, things quieted down for about 3 weeks. Shannon was cooler to me but polite. No more direct demands. I thought maybe we'd turned a corner. Peter seemed to relax. I let myself relax. Then I got a letter. It came from my bank, Fifth Third, in a plain envelope, the kind I might have set aside if I weren't in the habit of opening everything immediately. It was a notification about an inquiry on my home equity line of credit, an inquiry I had not made. I read it 3 times. I called the bank. I was on hold for 22 minutes. When someone finally answered, I explained the situation in a very controlled voice, the kind of voice I used to use in my 31 years as an office administrator when something had gone wrong and I needed to fix it without making it worse. The woman on the phone pulled up my account. She said there had been 2 inquiries in the past 6 weeks, both flagged to my address. Neither initiated by me. I thanked her. I asked her to flag the account for any further activity. I wrote down the name of who I spoke to and the date and the time. Then I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. I am not a suspicious person by nature. I have spent most of my life assuming the best and adjusting when the best didn't show up. But I am also the daughter of a woman who survived being widowed at 42 with 4 children and no college degree, and she taught me that kindness and naivety are not the same thing, and you'd better know the difference before the world teaches you the hard way. I called an attorney. Her name was Patricia Hensley, and a friend from church had used her for an estate matter 2 years before and spoken very highly of her. She was in her early 50s, wore her reading glasses on a chain around her neck, and had the particular manner of someone who has heard a great many difficult things without being surprised by any of them. I brought everything I had: the bank letter, my mortgage documents, the deed, 3 years of bank statements. I spread it all on her conference table, and I explained the situation from the beginning. She listened, she asked a few questions, then she asked me to give her 2 weeks. I gave her 2 weeks. What she found was worse than I had imagined, and I had spent 2 weeks imagining. Shannon had not accessed my account. Not yet. But she had been doing research. Patricia showed me a paper trail of online inquiries, public record searches on my property, and one document I still feel cold looking at, a quitclaim deed template she had downloaded and printed. Blank. Waiting. But that was only part of it. Patricia had also pulled credit records, things I was entitled to see, and what she found was that Shannon had accumulated $34,000 in credit card debt across 4 accounts, 2 of which were joint with Peter and 2 of which were not joint with anyone, just hers. And some of those charges, Patricia walked me through them with her reading glasses on and her voice very steady, overlapped with months when Peter was unemployed and I had been quietly covering the household utilities, the groceries, the internet bill, because I thought I was helping my son through a hard time. I sat in Patricia's office and I did the math in my head. I had been subsidizing Shannon's spending while she researched how to take my house. Patricia asked me what I wanted to do. She was very clear that she would advise me on whatever I decided. She wasn't there to tell me how to feel about my family. I told her I wanted to protect my home, and I wanted to know my options. She laid them out clearly. The quitclaim deed meant nothing without my signature. She couldn't have taken the property without my consent, or, God forbid, some kind of fraud. And Patricia believed that was likely where things were heading. We moved quickly. We placed a title alert on my property with the county recorder's office, a free service that notifies you of any recorded documents tied to your address. We drafted a revocable living trust and moved the property into it, which adds a layer of legal protection. We documented everything. Then I went home. I did not say anything to Shannon that night, or the next night. I have learned, and it took me most of my life to really learn this, that the most powerful thing you can do when someone underestimates you is let them keep underestimating you, until the moment it matters. I did start having quiet conversations with Peter. Not confrontations, conversations. I showed him the bank inquiry letter. I showed him the credit report information, just the parts pertaining to the joint accounts, which he had every right to know about. I watched his face. I have known his face since the day he was born. I watched him understand something he had maybe known for a while but hadn't let himself fully see. He was quiet for a very long time. He said, "Mom, I didn't know about the accounts." I believed him about that part. I said, "I know you didn't. But Peter, you did know how she spoke to me. You were in the room." He didn't answer. I said, "I need you to be my son, not her husband first and my son second. I need you to be my son." He put his head in his hands. The conversation with Shannon happened on a Sunday afternoon. Peter was there. I had not planned it to be that day, but sometimes things move at their own pace. She came downstairs and found us sitting at the kitchen table, and something in the way we were sitting must have told her what was happening, because she stopped at the bottom of the stairs and I saw it. Just for a second, something flicker across her face. I told her what I knew. I told her calmly, without raising my voice, the way my mother taught me to deliver hard truths. Look at the person, keep your hands still, don't apologize for what's true. Shannon tried several approaches in the span of about 8 minutes. First she said I was misinterpreting things. Then she said the credit cards were under control. Then she cried, genuine tears I think, or at least genuine fear, and said she hadn't meant any harm. She was just trying to think ahead, think about the future. She loved this family. Peter said, "Shannon, stop." That was the moment. 2 words. After months of looking at flaws and being diplomatic and hoping things would settle themselves. 2 words, and I felt something ease in my chest that had been tight for 2 years. She moved out 3 weeks later. She went to her sister's. Peter stayed. Not with me, not at first, but he rented a place nearby and we have had dinner every Sunday since. And he is in therapy, which I did not suggest but which I am glad about. Their marriage is, as far as I know, still technically intact, but not in the way that word usually means. That is between them. I have removed myself from the middle of it. The house is mine. It was always mine. The title alert is still active. Patricia's number is still in my phone. I want to tell you what I wish I had done differently, because I think that might be the most useful thing I can offer. I wish I had named it sooner. The first time Shannon just implied, that my presence was conditional on my usefulness, I should have named it out loud, right then, calmly and clearly. What you just said is not okay, and we need to talk about it. I let too many small things go because I was afraid of the conflict, and every unchallenged small thing became permission for the next larger thing. I wish I had talked to Peter sooner. I was trying to protect their marriage, which is a generous impulse, but not ultimately my job. My job was to be his mother. I could have been honest with him earlier, and let him make his own choices with full information. And I wish I had known, really known, not just intellectually known, that asking for help is not weakness. Calling Patricia felt like admitting defeat for about 10 minutes, and then it felt like the most competent thing I'd done in 2 years. I'm still in the house. The tomatoes are doing well this year. Joyce from next door thinks I should try heirloom varieties and has already offered to share her seeds. My sister is coming to visit in July and she'll sleep in the guest room, which has new curtains now, ones I picked out myself. Gerald's deck is still standing. I had a contractor look at it last fall and he said the bones were solid. I thought, yes, that's exactly right. The bones are solid. Whatever else has happened, the bones are solid. I don't tell this story to make you afraid of the people who love your children, or to suggest that kindness is a mistake. I tell it because I spent a long time believing that keeping the peace was the same as having peace. It isn't. Real peace, the kind that lets you sleep at night and pick your tomatoes in the morning without your stomach tight, that has to be built on honesty, even when honesty is uncomfortable, especially then. You are allowed to protect what is yours. You are allowed to say no in your own home. You are allowed to be a human being who has plans on a Saturday afternoon that matter just as much as anyone else's. I'm 67 years old and it took me too long to remember that. I'm telling you now, so maybe you don't have to wait as long as I did. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since all of this happened, not in some abstract philosophical way, just in the plain, quiet way you think when you're sitting on your back porch in the evening and you have enough distance to see things clearly. Shannon didn't wake up one day and decide to be the person she became in my home. It built slowly, the way most things that go wrong do. And if I'm honest, really honest, I have to include myself in that accounting. Every time I said nothing when she reorganized my kitchen without asking, I told her that silence meant approval. Every time I absorbed a comment about my age or my taste or my usefulness and just moved on, I made it easier for the next comment to come. I am not saying what she did was my fault. It wasn't. But I was a participant in the conditions that allowed it to continue as long as it did. That's just true, and I'd rather say it plainly than pretend I was only ever a victim. What I've come to understand is that there's a kind of intelligence that has nothing to do with education or credentials. It's the intelligence of paying attention to what's actually happening, not what you wish were happening. For 2 years, I kept explaining away what I saw because the explanation felt kinder than the truth. That's not wisdom. That's wishful thinking dressed up as patience. Peter is a good example of this too, from the other direction. He's a smart man. He knew on some level that things weren't right. But knowing something and being willing to act on what you know are two completely different things. And for a long time he chose not to act. Not out of cruelty, out of fear, I think. Fear of conflict, fear of conflict, fear of conflict, fear of choosing, fear of what choosing would cost him. The moment he said Shannon stop, 2 words, at the kitchen table was the moment he stopped letting fear make his decisions. That took courage. It came late, but it came, and I think it changed something in him that will last. There's a version of this story where I never called Patricia, where I kept smoothing things over, kept making myself smaller, kept telling myself that keeping the peace was worth whatever it cost. I know exactly where that version ends. It ends with a quitclaim deed in my name no longer on a house that Gerald and I bought when we were young and hopeful and had no idea what the years would ask of us. The deed is still in my name. Gerald's deck is still standing. Those things are true because at 67 years old, I finally understood something my mother tried to tell me decades ago. Protecting what's yours is not selfishness, it's responsibility. You can be generous and still have limits. You can love your family and still refuse to be diminished by them. Those things are not in conflict. What I want, if you take anything from this, is for you to trust what you observe, not what you hope, not what you're told. What you actually see with your own eyes, what you feel in your own chest when something isn't right. That instinct is not paranoia. That instinct is hard-earned intelligence, and it deserves to be listened to. I'm still here. The tomatoes are doing fine this year.